Hey, hey, we're back. So today is Song Doctor Sunday with a very special guest, Nyokabi Kariuki. And I met Nyokabi at NYU when I was doing my master's. What's up, Kabi? Try again and let's see if we can get you on. See if the request join button works for you. But yeah, we met at NYU and hey, it's working. I'm excited to chat with her because it seems like a lot is really going well for her right now. She's got a lot to share, updates, successes. What's up?
Hello.
We
How's it
figured it
going?
out.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of good because I all of a sudden I was like, I really want toast. And so
Ooh,
I went in my kitchen and
making some toast.
now I'm making toast.
That
So
sounds good.
it's all meant to be.
I have coffee.
Beautiful. Amazing. Dude, you've been doing a lot of cool stuff recently. I feel like in the
Mm-hmm.
last 3 days I've seen a lot of posts from you. Tell me
Yeah.
about your successes.
Whoa. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a lot of things, all at the same time, but I'm very grateful. So recently well, in November last year, I um, won essay recordings recompose competition.
Mm-hmm.
And essay recordings is actually part of Spitfire Audio. They're like the record label,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a really fun competition. Olive Lenz, who's a composer, very cool, has her music on like Netflix series, like Black Mirror and stuff. Really, really lovely person as well. The idea of the competition was to sort of pick a song off of her album and sort of rework it in any way that we
Yeah.
wanted to, and I just kind of had fun with it. And I also just really loved her music. And so, yeah, I submitted my entry and I won. And so that's just been really fun because part of the prize was to work with an animator to make a music video. So that's what recently came out. And
Ah, okay.
mm-hmm,
Okay, that's what that was. Yeah, that's
mm-hmm,
super cool. I love that.
yeah,
Okay. So here's something I didn't know. When you were at NYU, were you in the film scoring department?
no.
Okay, you just somehow they like made a post about you, I feel like on Facebook.
Yeah, they
And I was
did.
like, oh, I didn't know that she was in the, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really weird. Like, in undergrad, they only started having us like emphasize our tracks a little bit later.
Hmm.
So, and in a way, so there was, songwriting, concert composition, and film composition, but I love doing all of them.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, so for me, there was never really sort of that like delineation between things. Like, so in a way, I just kind of felt a part of all of these communities. So it was really lovely. I took a couple of film classes, not as many as I would have liked to, just because I didn't have as much space, but I took a couple, so maybe they know me a little bit.
Once you get
Yeah,
successful, everyone wants to claim you. That's what
yeah,
happens. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that's a good sign. That means you're on the right path. But yeah, I always found that weird too, like the I mean, I get that in order to learn certain skill sets, you do have to narrow down. Like, if
Hmm.
you really want to get good at orchestration, you do have to kind of like, okay, this is going to be my focus for the next couple of years. I'm just going
Yeah.
to focus on. But to then like narrow yourself in as like that as an is very weird to me. And I feel like maybe we're similar in this way. I've just been watching your work kind of from afar, and I
Hmm.
think that we have a lot in common. And
Yeah, we
yeah,
do.
and like I love you that you have a travel blog. I know it's probably not updated in the last year, but like
Yeah.
when I first met you, you kind of directed me to your blog, and I remember really thinking like, wow, this is someone who actually is thinking similarly to like just like interested in an expansive
Hmm.
framework and not like I feel like sometimes I don't know if you've been pegged this way, but this happens with me where people are kind of like, "Oh, so you're like a jack of all trades, master of none," and I'm like, "Go fuck yourself, first of all."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
secondly, like, what, like, I feel like part of being an artist is having enough experiences or kind of having enough
Hmm.
different perspectives that then you can have this cool kaleidoscope where you're like
Yes.
all these pieces in one frame.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly. And
Talk more
also,
about, yeah,
I
because I
mean,
know a little bit about you, but I only from your blog and from the few times we've hung out.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think something that's really interesting, at least for me, is like a lot of the time, just this like making things and like putting things into boxes is not something that I specifically like relate to, because for me it's all
Mhm.
coming from a similar place. It just kind of
Yeah.
expresses differently. So, you know, with like my travel blog, like writing has been like always has always been part of my life. And like I'm also a composer, and I also like perform, and I also like did photography a little bit. But for me, like it might seem like really different um like spaces to be in for a lot of people. And I think part of that is how like industry works, and you know, having these like clear like boxes, just, you know, I for me it's just all the same. It's all like
Yeah.
coming from a very similar place.
It's interesting that you said boxes there because I do think like you said, for industry it makes sense because they need to sell things. So people are
Yeah.
okay, well, for marketing purposes, we need to be able to. And but it's funny that like I think now that things have turned into like influencer, like you have to, as a composer, be your own marketer and all this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we've flipped this weird game on ourselves
Yeah.
where we're like, we have to know what box we fit in. When never in the history of creation has that been the case where the artist has to decide how to market themselves
Right,
like it
exactly.
is now. And it's odd because it doesn't, I'd be interested to hear your experience, but for me, it does not gel with being a creative person. Like I can go to that side in my brain, but then all of a sudden I'm like, the well has run dry. Like I don't know, I'm not making work. I'm just marketing myself. What's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, I feel that 100%. I think even in terms of like the music that I write, it's just very it's just all over the place, which I love. But then when it comes to figuring out how to like kind of advertise that to
Right.
people, or explain it to people, or even just with things like, you know, contacting like blogs, being like, hey, could you review this? Could you look through my music? It's, you know, even in that situation, like there's all these different like experimental music blogs, new music
I
blogs, like
know.
pop
I
music.
know.
And it's like, well, I feel like my music draws from so many of these different genres that it just, yeah. And then when you go and like sort of pitch it to them, they're like, oh, this is too this other thing for that. And then the
Right.
other thing is like, no, this is too the other thing. And it's like, where does this fit in? Because it's coming from me. Again, it's all the same for me. But I don't, yeah, it's a weird thing to have to figure out, I think.
I'm having that issue. Well, I've always had that issue, I guess, but I've found kind of ways around it where I was like, well, I'm just going to keep being in school and learning new skills, and then I'll just create my own ensemble. So for a while, I ran my own experimental music theater ensemble.
Oh,
But then I
cool.
was
What
like,
was like the instrumentation of that?
it was whoever, it depended on the show. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have, I was actually, I was researching a lot, asking different people who had had like companies, and pretty much all the artistic directors of companies that I was interested in, they were like, be careful if you have like your core group because people are always leaving and coming.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's something I can handle. I think I was like 24 at the time or something. And I was just, I mean, I was learning all new things. I was learning like how to have board meetings, how to run a nonprofit, how to be an artistic director, how to like, just like kind of all these things all at once. And I was like, let me kind of narrow the scope to make it like something I feel like I can handle right now.
yeah.
I did show by show. And one of our big shows that we created was the first, it's kind of an opera, but I like basically it's like an experimental lyric theater dance piece that I created. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found three dancers that I really loved that I felt like worked well with the choreographer I chose to work with. And then I had two other singers and myself. So it was like kind of a core of three singers, a core of three dancers, an actor. And I did a lot of the music electronically, but I also had the sound guy play guitar.
Oh,
So he was kind of like running the electronic pieces, and
right.
we were singing, and he was playing guitar, and there was a keyboard, so we played some keyboard. But a lot of it was vocal work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I am thinking for the future, like the more that I work, the more that I'm like, okay, well, if I'm someone who doesn't like to sit in people's boxes and I want to make big epic work, then it's on me to just figure out how to make that. Because it's kind of like, I don't know if this is your experience, but like anytime people are like, well, what do you make? And I'm like, well, you just have to see it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then I have to
Hmm.
just show, like, it's up
Yeah,
to me to show. I can't kind of like do proof of concept that's not just like the full thing. Otherwise
yeah,
people get confused. So
yeah. And I think part of it is also just like finding people who get you and like and sort of uplift you in that sense as well, because there will be a lot of people who don't understand what you're doing, but there will be a lot of people who do and who just understand. Yeah, so I think that's something that I've been really, really sort of intentional about, just finding people who get me and who,
yeah.
yeah, that I can work with, or that, you know, are happy to give me sort of a chance to show my work.
What's your like dream scenario?
Damn.
Is that too big?
I mean, I want to be a freelance composer. Like, I just want to make money from making music.
Mhm.
And just even outside of like making money out of it, I mean, just that's more in terms of me wanting to just be able to support myself. Um, I just want to make works about stories from home. Like that's just such a really important thing to me.
Tell me more about stories from home.
Stories from home. So I whoa, I don't even know where to start. Like, so yeah, I grew up in Nairobi, Kenya. And it's a gorgeous place, a very vibrant, like diverse city, in many different layered ways. And, you know, a lot of that also does have to do with the fact that we were independent from the British in the 60s, 1963. But that the repercussions of, you know, that period continue to sort of permeate in society today. And part of that was, you know, a lot of cultural erasure took place. And
Yeah.
a lot of the institutions that I attended were also British, sort of international school. And, you know, there is a privilege I have to acknowledge in the fact that I had access to those. Um, but, you know, the thing that sort of happened with that was a lot of me wanting to just me not knowing full like too much about like where I actually was from, and in the same way, just in terms of like I don't fully speak our languages. I understand, but I don't fully speak them. I you know English is what I'm most fluent in, um, and just even just learning about home, just home, just in the way it is away from whiteness, is just not part of the education that I got. So it was interesting because you know, my parents, um, they both speak our languages, and they grew up in the village. So we have gone there often. So that was something that we would do. We were always sort of like I always knew where they came from.
Right.
But at the same time, I grew up in the city, so it was a very different experience for me going there than it was for you know them going there. So I think for me, it's just been this sort of journey that I'm going on of just kind of rediscovering all of that I sort of you know had sort of started pushing away in school because we weren't taught it. We were taught to have very different ideals, and you know with a white man in the center of that ideal, in terms of music, in terms of our history, like just a lot of things that we were learning about, that was yeah just taken that was erased from what the actual reality of like Kenyans of people from my ethnic group were, just like yeah just a lot of things. So I've you know been engaging with a lot of literature, and
Like what? Share
so
with.
oh yeah so I've been reading. I'm a huge fan of Francis Bebey. Like he is like my idol. He's a Cameroonian. He was a Cameroonian composer.
Write this down.
And
I've never heard of him. Say his
he's
name again.
so cool. Francis Bebey.
Okay.
Um, I just his musical philosophy feels very similar, like aligned to mine in terms of you know what like who are the African music makers and like what is the way forward for us in this society like post-colonialism, and how, what is our musical voice in this sort of global space, I guess. So that's very much his thing. And he's an electronic composer, really, really cool stuff.
Cool.
And
Do you feel like
then
he's come to any conclusions that you feel really connected to, or is it mostly that he's asking the correct questions and you're like, yes, I want to be on that train of those questions?
I think that he has come to some conclusions. I want to quote him. I don't remember, but I can sort of try and paraphrase. But for him, he was saying, I think a lot of, well, he was writing this in the, I think, 70s, 80s, thereabouts. So something that he was saying that was really interesting to me was like, the role for the African musician today is not only about preservation, but it's also um, about looking forward, about futurism as well, and
Yeah.
how, um, you know, just for him, technology is a really big thing because he's an electronic composer. So just sort of that marriage of I guess some of the modern world stuff can be fused in order to make like another sort of African sort of mode of expression. So it was really interesting. It was really, really interesting to sort of engage with his work. And then, yeah, like I listened to him so much. He plays the sansa, which is, yeah, so this is like also another part of my journey. Like there's the mbira or kalimba, which is
Mhm.
very, it's an African instrument. And it's so fascinating to me because all over the continent, there are different iterations of it. And so, he would play the sansa. And there's I think it's his album Psychedelic Sansa. It's one of my favorite ones of his. So a lot of that is him processing, his playing it, and there's just a lot of interaction between electronics and that. And that's something that my music's been like. I've been collecting a lot of like kalimbas, umbiras, from different places, and sort of reconnecting again to that like the African like sort of ancestry of that, yeah, that musical like lineage,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Curious to know, and this may be like a much bigger question, but like,
Yeah.
so one, do you play any of these instruments or have you like looked into studying with anybody? And then two, how does that kind of transmission of knowledge work in that culture? Because I foolishly went to India because I love Indian music, and I was like, I'm gonna go find a teacher to teach me Indian classical music. I know I'm a
Hmm.
Westerner, I know I'm a beginner, but I'll find someone, only to get there and realize that like that is not how it works. Like you do not
Yeah.
just like show up and find a music school. Like that is not gonna happen. So
I mean, yeah, so yes, I play them. That's what I mean. Like I sort of have been collecting them and exploring them in my music. But I think right now I've been approaching it from a very like compositional perspective, and also just sort of learning it orally. Like when I hear songs, I'm like, okay, well, let me try and figure out this pattern that they're playing, or this whole thing. And compositionally, by that I mean like, as a composer, I think for me, what is so freeing about this compared to being a performer, which is how I grew up. And again, this is very by Western definition. It's just this idea of having to like learn how to play things perfectly by how it was originally done. But I think like as a composer, what's so freeing about it is that like I get to decide the rules, and I get to decide that there are no rules.
mhm.
So it's been really, really fun. And I have like, I think I have four, um, and they all have really different scales, different tunings, and I just really love that. So for me, it's just kind of like learning each specific instrument, and they also have like different number of notes on them. So that's another fun thing because I'm learning to make music in very different contexts each time I'm engaging with each one of them. So that's something you'll be hearing a lot in a lot of my upcoming work.
Talk about your upcoming projects and the one that
Ooh.
just came out. I know you touched on it briefly, but
So, okay, whoa. So the one that just came out, yeah, so that was the music video for the entry that I'd done. And yes, you will hear some processed kalimba in that. It was really fun. So I don't know, what else would you want to know about it that I haven't already mentioned?
It sounds like you're working on a new project. You said coming
It
up,
does.
and it definitely, you
Yeah.
can see the kind of lineage of like, here's how I grew up amongst whiteness and this hierarchy that actually I don't identify with anymore. But I was raised as like as a performer, so I have
Hmm.
this background. Then I went to composition school, and then I'm kind of retracing my steps to go back
Yeah.
and to find. But it almost sounds like, at least what I'm hearing is that you're kind of like picking up these artifacts. It's not like you're going back to be like, I'm going to go find my sensei, my guru, whatever, however, and like just live with them for a year. It's not
Hmm.
that. It's like you're kind of like collecting these artifacts that have a lot of meaning and history behind them, and then almost like writing your own story,
Well, yeah,
which
but
is
I
very
think it's
interesting
also
because that's
like,
not.
but it's also like a personal, it's that personal connection. Like, it's not like artifacts, at least to me, has the connotation of, being an outsider,
Mm,
collecting these items. But for
right.
me, I'm like, I am like my lineage is like a great like chain of African, Kikuyu, Bantu people, and
Yeah.
so for me, that's why I call it rediscovering, because it's just that actually connecting to my own spirit, um, in a way that I you know sort of missed a little bit when I was growing up, or maybe not, or maybe yeah, I think it was very subconscious in that, and I'm trying to be to also sort of have a conscious relationship as well. I think that's how I'd say it.
That's beautiful. So there's
Hmm.
like a spiritual aspect of remembrances in these items, because
Yeah.
it's not so much like, oh, here's this instrument and now I'm just gonna like relearn how it works or something. It's almost like your hands touch it and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, this is home. This
right.
instrument is home, and this is me. Yeah. Yeah.
How does your voice relate to that? Like instruments versus voice. What's your experience there with expressing yourself between those two?
So this is really funny. Like, I think I've been asked this a little more than I expected to. I never used to sing. Actually started singing when I was in college, or like properly,
Oh, okay.
or like officially. I don't want to say properly, but officially. Um,
What did you play
because
before that?
piano. So piano from when I was 6, and so a lot of it was me. I would sort of learn the rap, would perform solo, but I was also like very much an accompanist. And like school assemblies, a lot of my friends were the singers, and so I would be accompanying them.
Uh,
And then, I would help out with the choirs in our school. I would help arrange the music for that. And then, I would also like help out in terms of like writing out the parts, the harmonies. And so I mean, I could sing, but I was not a singer during that time. And then in college, when I was, sort of growing into my compositional voice, I still loved writing for everything. I love writing for everything. But I went through a period where I was, really coming into my own as a songwriter. And what would happen was that I would write the songs against my own voice.
mhm.
And I think, and so I don't know, I think there was just something very like distinct about my voice that I was like, oh, this sounds good on my voice. Like, let me write that. Um, and then I would sort of give it, when I would show it to my composition teachers, they would be like, I think you should sing. I think you should sing it. I think this is just very like unique to what your voice is. I think
Mhm.
you should do it. And I was like, oh, maybe I should. Um, and so that's just sort of how it happened. And it was just a really, really interesting process because, yeah, it took me a really long time to actually say, like, I'm a vocalist as well, because I didn't receive like a formal training in that, in the way that I did the piano. And
Mhm.
again, whatever that means.
Oh, that's such a good point. I feel like there's a lot of discussion happening about that too. As someone
Yeah.
who went to conservatory to learn classical voice training, I still
Hmm.
look at it and I'm like, what even is that?
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get that there are contexts for, I guess the way that I can break it down for myself is like, I understand that in a 2,000 seat auditorium, people at the back of the room need to be able to hear what you're saying if you're speaking a theater piece that is to communicate a specific idea.
Hmm.
But beyond that, like, what are we doing? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like
I
there's
mean,
so
also
much
there's
to
like
offer.
microphones now. I don't know.
I
I
know, I
feel like,
know.
there's like things that are changing why we should do certain, yeah, there's some things that are just kind of obsolete now because we figured out how to navigate them.
Right. Science has
Yeah.
gotten us much further. And I kind of get if it's like, they talk about the museum culture, and that's fine to have
Hmm.
like to be very specific about here's how this thing happened in 1765. And you're like, cool, I'm going back
Yeah.
in time to some, but to have this new, and even when people are talking about like, even the, what did I did the prototype, I worked the prototype festival, which has all these new operas. It's kind of like the big new opera festival.
Hmm.
And all of the singing was still like in their tiny little black boxes, and people are still doing this like, I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are you singing like that? It doesn't
Right.
make any sense.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's this weird, like, we kind of learned everything is like a conglomerate thing, and people aren't kind of being patient enough to take apart the pieces of like,
Yeah.
here's why this like woo was important in like a 1,000 seat Greek auditorium or something.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like, do we need that? Yes or no? And then
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. I think people are very scared to do that because I think it feels like you're changing like the fundamental aspect of what you've created. But I don't think so. I don't think that's it at all. But I think people feel like, you're fully changing. Like if you change this one aspect of like, this art form, like it's completely gone out the window. But it's not like that. Like cultures evolve, like art forms evolve, like and then there's so much space for that evolution to take place. But I think people are very like married to it and
that's so
so
interesting that you say that, because I think I've been having this conversation for a long time, but it's like started to hone in on what is actually happening as I make more work, I think, or as I kind
hmm
of like step more into my identity as like, yes, I am a composer. No, I'm not a performer who's like dabbling. I'm like a full composer. So I feel like
yeah.
getting more of that like strength under me to be like, wait, my opinions matter. Like, my opinion, they have relevance. Is you were saying about Francis? You're saying he has like a philosophy behind music making that's very strong, and I think that that's lacking a lot, especially in the opera world. When people there's this weird thing where if you do sit in a room of creators who are making that kind of work, and you're like, okay, but what are we actually doing?
Mm.
Like, so much uncomfortable silence because
Yeah.
I don't think I think it's like we're kind of used to everyone just accepting that however it was is how it
Is
is.
how it is, yeah.
And so when you're like, okay, but who are we actually talking to?
Hmm.
What story are we actually telling?
Yeah.
And how is that relevant to our audience that we've chosen?
Exactly.
And like,
Exactly.
wow, do people get uncomfortable? And
Hmm.
honestly, I don't need everything to be about like social justice and political. I don't need that. And my work is often not that. I like love stories, just, and I know that that can both be social justice and political, but
Yeah.
you can tell me like my piece is just a dance party and I want people to show up and just like dance their asses off and sweat for 3 hours, and that's what my piece is about. I'm like, perfect,
Hmm.
awesome,
Hmm.
clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's quite lacking, I find, in like this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's like new, it's hard for me to tell because it kind of permeates everything, but definitely like classical music, new music, like kind of higher education type
Yeah.
music, definitely in the jazz world too. um yeah, quite fascinating as a creator
Yeah.
and a philosopher, which I feel like you are both a creator and a philosopher. It's an interesting time to be alive, I would say.
Yeah. Did you want to know who my composition teachers were? I think that was like the
Yeah,
first question you asked.
yeah,
Okay, so I'm also curious to hear who yours were. I went through a lot. I was kind of like a hoe with my composition teachers.
that's good. That's, I feel like that it should be that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it was, I'm glad that it was that way. Because at the end I did find the person that like, that I felt really, really got me. And I think I would not have understood that if she was my teacher from the beginning.
Mhm.
So the first teacher I had in freshman year was Herschel Garfield. Um, we just did not understand each other at all, like at all.
I don't know
Like
this person, so.
yeah, we just did not understand each other.
Yeah.
But I but I had him for 2 semesters because I was like maybe it's just me, because again I was first year, like I didn't really know how this worked.
Hmm.
I'd never had a composition teacher before, a private one, and so I was like maybe it's more like me and whatever. But my mom was like, if you don't like him, like pick someone else. And I was like, true, you're right,
Hmm.
like that, it's as easy as that.
Hmm.
So and this was when I was like, uh, oh, I really do like songwriting and I do really want to explore that. So I looked into the songwriting department and I had David Wolfert for the first semester of my um, second year. And I knew that I was going to study abroad in Paris, so I knew that this would be like a 1 semester thing. So I really liked that because I knew that in Paris I was going to have a classical, like very classical traditional composition teacher. There was not an option for like songwriting, I don't think. So I was like, okay, 1 semester songwriting, 1 semester like classical, like let's see how I feel about these two, in that sense. And I adore David. He was, I don't know if you had him too, but
Mm-mm.
I loved him. I think he's very intentional about like lyrics. And so I think really, really began to get an idea of like how to, write effective lyrics, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just a period where I just like wrote so much, so many new songs, and just really started to understand my voice. And it got to a point towards the end where I was like, I'd write something and I was like, I know which parts he's gonna have a problem with.
Hmm.
Um, which was interesting that I was like starting like learning to start I was learning to self-edit, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool skill that I'd picked up from that in a way that I hadn't with my first composition teacher, where with him, like, I just didn't really understand like what his specific opinions were. I didn't really understand what his feedback ever was.
Mm.
And I was never really able to apply it into the next like works that I was showing him. But with David, just, I had very much like
There was
understood what he
technique
was.
there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like composition can get so weird because sometimes people just have tastes,
yeah.
and then you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, thanks, I guess. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think with my first teacher, like a lot of his feedback was based on like his own like, you know, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. So it's just kind of hard to learn from that. But I think with David, I think he was very good at separating. I mean, there were times that he'd be like, I personally don't like this, but like I see why you're doing this, or like I would do this differently, but take it or leave it or whatever. So, but like there were things that he was very non-negotiable on, and but even talking through that, and because of that, like of how particular he was, it made me become a lot more particular as well about what I was writing. And then after that, I went to Paris and to study abroad. I loved that experience. We for composition lessons we were put into the school École Normale de Musique,
mhm.
uh, and our teacher was Michel Mellet, who is a Prix de
Wow.
Rome winner. 1966, he won that, and he was Messiaen's pupil as well.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. I was doing that with Leah and Mark. We would have the private composition lesson together in the same room. It was three
Wow.
hours long and it was in French throughout. And I loved it.
All in French?
It was all in French.
Oh my
All
God.
of it. I
Did
loved
you
it.
did you learn French like preparing to go there, or had you already known it? Or
Well, a mix. So I took French in high school,
okay.
and then so I had like basic, understanding of things, and then I'd been to Paris for a writing course the previous year as
Like
well.
creative writing, like
Yeah, that's my minor, was creative writing.
oh cool.
Although that was in English, but I was in France for a month, and I think I was like kind of getting back into it a little bit. And then studying abroad, we had to take French, and we took
Yeah.
intensive, like, so it was a bit difficult in the beginning, but towards the end, you're like, okay, I understand what's happening. And also, like, he was very good at explaining things through music. So he'd be like, not like this.
Yeah.
Wait, he spoke no English, actually. That was a joke. He would say it in French, but then he would play it, and then we'd understand what he meant. He was incredible. He was incredible. And we did like orchestration and composition with him. Very intense, but I loved it. And so at the end of my second year, it was very clear to me, like, I love songwriting. I also love like this like traditional
Hmm.
sort of classical composition.
Hmm.
So I was very excited to embrace all of these as like parts of my compositional voice. And then who did I have after that? So then oh my God, this is such an interesting journey. When I got back to New York for my third year, I was like, okay, I think I might get more out of songwriting lessons. So let me have another songwriting teacher, because I felt like, as much as I love David, I was like interested to get another perspective, just because I was very used to how he taught.
Hmm.
So I got Dana, and
I don't know any of these people, so I'm reading your face though, and I'm learning a lot. So
yeah, I wish you knew her, because it was such a man. I would just be so upset at the end of like so
mm.
many of our lessons, because she was very much like pop music formula,
Oh
like
yeah,
just kind of superimposed that onto everything I did. She was
yeah.
like, you don't want people to fall asleep listening to your music. That's what she'd tell me. Um,
What if you do though? Like there's so many musics that are meant for bedtime.
it was not that kind of music, and she meant that in the way that my music she felt was boring, or like too like stagnant.
It's just like it's lame that I feel like people can kind of get into this, like this weird like amount. What is it called? I want to call it amalgamous thinking, but I don't think that's what it is. We're just kind of like they
Yeah,
don't realize that they're saying like the purpose of music is to hype
it's too,
people up when they're
yeah,
in the
yeah,
car on their way to work, and I'm like,
yeah.
the purpose of music is many things.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And no, that's not what the kind of music I was writing. But for her, she was just not. There's something else that she said, or just other things that she would say. She's like, your voice is really weird, but like she would also like. She was one of the people who encouraged me to sing. She's like, your voice is, it's not like what like people would like really want. Like, it's not like, it's not like a. But you should sing. You're stuck. It was just, we just did not connect. We did not understand. Well, she didn't understand me or my music, and so I shopped around again, and I found Jerica, and she was my love. I adore
Oh,
her. She's Slovenian, um, you know, PhD. Very. I had known her from like she'd done a talk at Collegium, and I was like really, really into her.
yeah.
And just I had such good things from everyone who was studying with her. So I had her for a year and a half. So that was the rest of my time at NYU, and I was like, yeah, this is my
And
comp teacher.
she's comp or she's songwriting,
She's concert.
concert music. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, I don't know
she,
any of those two. I'm gonna go look them up.
damn. Who did you have?
Well, I studied with Joan LaBarbera, and
Hmm.
really, technically, I was only at NYU for a semester, but I hung out for a second semester to
Oh.
basically, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, sit in on people's lessons. Because it was
Mm.
like a weird money thing happened where they were like, hey, come do your master's here. It's essentially like we're giving you enough grant money so that you don't have to pay for your master's. So I was like, oh, in that case, I can do it. But then I showed
Hmm.
up and they were like, oh, but you have to take twice as many courses for us to deliver your grant money. Because it's like
What?
your master's program works that you really only do credits. So you have to have something like 26 credits to graduate. So they
Hmm.
essentially gave me money for 26 credits. But then when I got there, they were like, oh, but we're not releasing your money unless you take a full course. So like,
Whoa.
and so I was like, well, that's like 30 grand basically a semester. I don't have that. That money does not exist. So the first semester I stayed because Julia was very kind and she was trying to help me figure it out. And like everyone
Mm.
in the actual degree department was very kind and trying to help
Yeah.
out and stuff. But NYU at large was basically like, nope, no exceptions. We don't care. La 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 la. And I was like, well, fuck you. Like, this is the worst customer service ever.
Yeah,
I
that's messed
basically,
up.
it was super messed up. So that's when Joan the barber actually told me, she's like, you might want to look into Princeton because they have a good stipend and they might be interested in what you're doing. And never did
Right.
I ever think an Ivy League would be interested in what I'm doing. But
Yeah.
looked into it and I was like, oh, they're actually very forward thinking and they're interested in like all these different types of vernaculars. And so I just got in now this year, but I
Yeah.
applied 3 times in a row. But
Whoa.
I moved to Newark, New Jersey. I cut my expenses in half and
Mm.
like basically just tried to work on my portfolio. And like I did some gigging as a choral singer in New York City and I taught some music lessons and I was just like scrambling basically to survive for most
Right.
of that time because you figure out really quickly how expensive New York City is. And
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't know, it's such like a whirlwind experience. It's hard to look back on it. But I did meet some awesome people like you and Leah and Rohan I still talk to and
Mm.
communicate with. And Joan is an incredible, she's like Joan and Julia were both the reasons why I was like, yeah,
NYU.
I'll pick up and move to NYU for,
Yeah.
I just think that they're brilliant.
Trailblazers, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, trailblazers, brilliant. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, man, if I could have mentors like that, imagine how far I could go.
Yeah.
So it
I'd
was
love to hear
unfortunate.
about like the Prince, because I told you I've been looking at it. It looks really, really interesting because I also have like a project that I like one like my dream that I'd love to do is like a full scale like orchestral work for based on the Kikuyu origin story. Um,
I'm not familiar with that, but I'll look it up. How do you spell it?
yeah, I mean, so I'm Kikuyu, that's my ethnic group,
Okay.
and there's recently very famous writer, a very famous Kikuyu writer. He's called Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I can spell that for you.
Yeah.
Ngugiwa,
Okay.
and then Thiongo.
That's what I thought. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. He he he's he's an icon. Done so much work on like languages and decolonialism. Um, and he wrote an epic like it's in my room. It's like yeah, it's an epic of like the Kikuyu origin story, and I thought it was just so beautiful. It's just so colorful, and I was like, I can hear music off of this, and I'd love to like write a full scale like work based on that because there's like 10 daughters in the origin story, and so I was like maybe like a movement for each. So that's like a dream of like a short, like not a long term, but like a short, long term dream that I have to just like do that work. And I just was really into the Princeton program because, at least from how it seems, is like you sort of choose your own adventure and you get to sort of direct how you want your research to go and the work that you want to go, and they sort of just support you in that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was really like attracted to.
It's honestly the dream. I have not started yet, so I don't know details, but like
Okay.
I was doing a ton of research too as I was applying. And the more that I did on this school, the more I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in any other PhD except for this because
Yeah.
I don't want to just like write papers. Like that's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
There, it's still hard for me to like process because I think having this happen during like a pandemic is very strange. Just
Yeah.
me alone in my apartment, like high fives.
When do you start?
In September, but I think I'm gonna move in June
Okay.
or July to give myself time to like set up and kind of get settled and acquainted.
You have to stay on campus?
For the first 2 years, you have to.
Okay.
And then you can go wherever you want. And I have a feeling I'm similar to you in my love of travel. So as long as things permitted, everything opens up, I have a feeling that my last 3 years I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling with research.
Oh, yeah.
I really love studying music with, I hate to call it world music because I know there's no such thing.
Yeah.
But like
I will fight
music
you.
of cultures that are not my own is like
Yeah.
fascination for me. And what I did grow up on, weirdly, my mom and dad's record collection was such that like very early on my ears were tuned to like sounds that I can't they can't escape my, I still crave them And like I know just enough to be very curious, but
Yeah.
not enough to like know how I relate to it other than just through headphones.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have this desire to like go on that journey for myself, which in some ways is like a journey back to my childhood and just like
Mm.
listening to records lying on the living room floor.
Yeah.
But in another way is also like what does this mean? How does this, it's still an interest, like I don't have any answers yet, but my dad is an Irish tenor, so I definitely have that like
Mm.
in kind of in my blood is that music, and I can pick it
Yeah.
up super fast just because kind of like you were saying, like you pick up these instruments, but really you're picking up like a memory
Yeah,
that feels,
exactly.
and it just like fits. It's just like, oh,
Exactly.
this dress fits.
That's
But
exactly it.
but I also don't, as a composer, I'm not fascinated by what comes easily to me.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
yeah, and I really love collaborating, but I think in this new world of figuring out, I guess it's maybe how to effectively do cultural exchange.
Mm. Mm.
Some of the conundrums I've found myself in attempting to like me showing up to India and being like, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna find a teacher, and then it's just being,
Right.
first of all, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Second of
Yeah.
all, that's not how this works. Like, is kind of making these, I guess, bold and like well-meaning like steps forward and being like, okay, hold up, there's a lot I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
So figuring out, I guess, how to effectively collaborate where I'm not just like, oh, well, my heritage is Irish, and so therefore I make Irish music. But like,
Mm.
okay, well, we have electronic music, which I love, and then I was kind of like raised on all of these different kinds of world musics. My stepdad is Cuban, so I have a lot of like different Latin American sounds in my ear too, just from his record collection, and like
Mm.
just I don't. It's I'm trying to figure out
How? Yeah.
how, and even if my conclusion ends up being like you get to love that music and appreciate it, but it doesn't make sense for you to embody, that's
Mm.
fine. But I
Yeah.
want to know for sure. I don't want to like give up
Yeah.
and be like, well, this is what I was born with, so this is what I'm allowed or something.
Right. Right.
Instead of being like, well, what if we had bigger conversations and what would it look like to like kind of embrace what is out there? And for me, in this very moment, I'm like, that's a lot of history to learn. That's the thing because even when I went to India, I was staying at, for part of it, I went to Varanasi, which is like their holy
Mm.
city. It's an
Mm-hmm.
ancient city where it's like their religious, it's the Hindu city where everyone goes when they die. If you're a Hindu,
Right.
you're then sent to Varanasi, that there's this big death burial thing. So it's very sacred, holy place, and there's a lot of music that happens there. And the
Right.
guy who was renting the Airbnb I was in was also a really famous tabla player, and he allowed me to come visit him every once in a while to give tabla lessons, but he never let me
Ooh.
touch a tabla. He basically put them there and then taught me about like the Hindu religion and their mythologies. And he's like,
Yeah.
if you don't understand the mythology, you can't
Yeah.
play music.
Right.
And that made a ton of sense to me. And I was like,
Right.
that's completely valid. And so now
Yeah.
as I'm looking forward at like, well, if these are all the sounds I'm interested in incorporating, even like Eastern European vocal music is really fascinating to me, like that Bulgarian
Right.
vocal sound and like
Right.
the Georgian singing. But it's true, I think, that like music is the language of emotion, definitely, but it's also a way that we carry our mythologies.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
without doing the research on mythologies, like
Yeah.
you're not really doing anything.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I'm just looking ahead, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of stories to learn, but it's cool.
Mm. Yeah.
I guess that's where my head is now, and kind of sounds fun to just be like maybe in Princeton for 2 years and then for 3 years just like traveling and studying with people and seeing what pops up, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'd also like love to do. Like again, just go like research like in
Yeah.
Kenya and or like Zimbabwe as well. Like I'd just love to just sort of sit down with,
Right.
you know, the sort of people in the community who play these instruments and like really, really get that sort of understanding of its spiritual like significance and like cultural significance as well. Yeah, it's a very big part because I think that's something that's just so like watered down,
Yeah.
in a way.
New world of sampling, where it's like, well, I
Yeah,
sampled your beat, so technically it's like, no.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah. Well,
Cool.
good luck with it. I'm so excited to sort of watch you on your journey through that because I really, maybe, yeah, hopefully, or maybe I'll be on the same one as well in a couple of
Yeah, you should
years.
come visit too.
Yeah.
Once I'm there and I have a place to land, you're always welcome to come hang. And
Okay. And I know like So Percussion is also like doing a residency there. I'm like, that's so cool.
I've heard
Uh,
really good things about them. I've
Yeah.
never worked with them, but I've heard really good things about them.
Yeah.
And
I,
I've written for percussion like once, and it was very complicated.
ooh.
So
Yeah, it's fun. I don't know. I like, I'm obsessed with it, with writing for percussion. Um,
I
I
love.
don't know why. I mean, maybe I do, but that was another exciting thing for me. Because I know they came to NYU once to perform some music. At least
Mhm.
one of the members did,
I
Jason.
remember that. Yeah, he came. He presented in. Is it colloquium? Is that what it's called?
Collegium, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just like Julie's class.
yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, tell people where they can find. Sorry, I kept you so long. You're
No,
like,
it's
can we
okay.
do
This
20
was a
minutes?
lovely conversation. I do have another
Everyone asks
meeting
the
to.
same question too, by the way. Everyone is like, so what are we talking about? I'm like, it's off the cuff. And they're all like, okay.
Yeah,
Trust me, it's gonna be fun.
yeah. It was really interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. I'm glad I didn't like prepare
Fair.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah, there's so many opportunities as a composer, I think, to like, here's a preparation of my works. And like, I don't
yeah.
do that. So,
That's
um,
fair.
but I would like people to be able to follow you and find your work. So do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah. My website, nkariuki.com. Um, you can also follow me on Instagram at nkariuki _. Also Twitter, I think it's similar. It's all the same. It's
It's all the
N
same. Yeah.
karaoke everywhere, pretty much. And yeah, I have a fun concert. I wrote a friend of mine from NYU, Ian Fales. He's now studying at Manus, the new school. He commissioned me to write a bass piece, double bass piece for him, and so
Is it a
he's.
bass solo?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's exciting.
And yeah, mine has fixed media, which is I'm really excited about. That happens this Thursday,
Cool.
so you're
Is that,
invited.
do you have the link on your Instagram, maybe? Like,
I do not. I can. It's on like Facebook.
if you,
I
yeah,
will
send me
do a
the link.
post about it for
Yeah,
sure.
send me the link and I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay.
Or like below the final video, whatever that's
Okay.
the comments.
Yeah. I can send you the link of the Facebook event.
Cool.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
we have to have more conversations, I feel like, because
Yeah.
I think we're maybe not asking the same question, but I feel like we're in the same orbit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, which is cool. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for
And I'm
having me.
happy to get to know more about you. And I'm also going to be excited to watch you. It seems like you're coming into a lot of success with what you're making. So that's beautiful. And well
Thank
deserved.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, have a lovely day.
You
And
too.
I'm about to go record some songs that I'm not prepared to record. So
Ooh.
you know that feeling.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, if you're releasing anything soon, I'm so excited to hear it.
I will be. I think this summer. So my
Ooh.
goal is to finish the album by May, but then
Mm-hmm.
to work on like mixing and stuff a little bit more freely since I'm moving soon, and then potentially release in like July or August. So I'll let you know. Maybe I'll send you some tracks and you can do some improvisation or something.
Oh
Yeah, that would be
yeah.
fun. Okay.
Oh my
I'll
God,
send you
yeah,
some stuff.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. We'll do it. Awesome.
Bye.
Well, have a lovely day, and we'll talk. We'll keep in touch. Let's just keep having this conversation. Cool. Bye.